Stop just accepting things. The Buddha said you must choose. When you sit down to meditate, you're making choices. You could choose to be with the breath or to wander around. If you choose to be with the breath, you can decide what kind of breathing you want to do. Fast, slow, heavy, light. You can decide where you want to focus in the body. You can choose what kinds of perceptions you hold in mind about the breath. You can perceive the breath as the air coming in and out through the nose, or you can perceive it as the energy flow that goes through the body that allows the air to come in and out. The Buddha would actually recommend the second, because when he talks about breath, he treats it as part of the wind element in the body. It's not a tactile sensation from outside, it's the energy you feel inside the body. But here again, you can perceive that in different ways too. You have the choice of thinking of the breath energy coming in from outside, or you can think of it originating inside the body. You can have it originating at 1 point or 2 points, or think of every cell of the body breathing in, breathing out. You have lots of choices. This is probably one of the most important themes in the Buddha's teachings. When he taught the 4 noble truths, he didn't present them simply as 4 interesting facts about suffering and stress. He said, here are 4 different things you can do. You can try to comprehend the stress and suffering, looking to see that in the action of clinging, there is suffering right there, and to see how that's true. Then see how that changes your relationship to suffering. Understanding it that way, you can abandon the cause, which is craving. You can develop the path so that ultimately you can realize the cessation of suffering. These are all choices you can make as to what you can do, and these choices make a difference. One of the biggest misunderstandings about the teachings is that the Buddha is simply teaching you to accept things as they are, that the basic cause of suffering is that we have a neurotic refusal to accept things as they are, and that when you learn to accept them, it's okay. I was listening to a Dhamma talk given recently by a monk in which he was talking about how, when he was a young monk, he suffered an accident. He realized that the worst thought that came to him as he was going through the accident was, he hoped nobody would see him doing the stupid move that caused the accident, and he observed, "Oh yes, I have a problem with vanity." Then he talked about another incident 40 years later that again showed his vanity, as if it were just a constant that he had to accept about himself, and somehow accepting it made it okay. That wasn't the Buddha's approach. As he said, he taught people to develop skillful qualities, abandon unskillful ones, because they can do it, and because by developing skillful qualities and abandoning unskillful ones, it would lead to happiness. So you can make these choices, and the choices do make a difference between whether you're going to suffer or not going to suffer. Now, some people don't like being held responsible. They like to think that whatever they've done wrong wasn't their fault. But if that's your attitude, you're never going to learn anything, and the end of suffering will elude you. So learn to appreciate the fact that you can make choices, and the choices do make a difference, so that when the mind begins to settle down, you can choose to try to maintain that sense of stillness. There'll be some frustration as the mind slips away, but don't give in to the frustration. Just keep coming back. Coming back, coming back. Try to figure out What is it that makes the mind want to slip away? And what can you do to make it want to stay instead? Ajahn Lee recommends thinking of the breath as a whole body process and allowing it to be comfortable. Now, he does admit that some people find it hard to start out with the whole body. So in that case, he recommends that you start with a smaller area. But still, try to make that spot comfortable. Notice which way you breathe has a good effect on it, which way has a bad effect on it. And don't just stop with noticing. Try to breathe in a way that has a good effect. It all sounds very simple and very basic, but it's so basic that people say, the Buddha must have been a lot more sophisticated than that. There must be something tricky about the way he taught. But the Buddha was not a tricky teacher. He was very straightforward, honest, direct. Good qualities are good. They can be developed and have a good impact on your mind. So we start with mindfulness. Give mindfulness a good foundation. Combine it with alertness, the ability to see what you're doing while you're doing it, and ardency, the desire to do this well. That kind of desire, the Buddha said, is good. It's not the case that all desires are bad. The desire to develop skillful qualities and to abandon unskillful ones is actually part of the path. It comes under right effort. It's simply a matter of learning how to relate to your desires skillfully. You've probably had the experience where you want the results so badly that you're not paying careful attention to what you're doing. That's a good intention, but it's not skillful. It's not focused in the right place. You want to focus your desires on the causes. Each time you breathe in, stay with the breath. Each time you breathe out, stay with the breath. Desire that. And as long as you're going to stay together, try to breathe in a way that allows the mind to feel at ease with the breath. At the same time, have your mind place just the right amount of pressure on the point of your focus, not so much that you constrict the breath, and not so little that everything slips away. You want it just right. Then try to maintain that sense of just right. The mind, which in the beginning may not be all that calm, can begin to calm down some. You can't expect the comfortable breath to do all the work for you. You have to keep reminding yourself, calm down, be at ease here. This will get good soon. They've noticed that even babies are able to soothe themselves. They call it a process of self-soothing, where a baby is upset, and so, as it's lying there alone on its back, it learns how to calm itself down, put itself to sleep. And that's without having any meditation instructions at all. So we all have this ability within us someplace to calm ourselves down. Realize that you're doing delicate work here, so get calm. And then the delicate work will increase the calm and make it last. All because you choose to do this. You start out with a good intention, and then you try to maintain that intention. Simply making the intention doesn't guarantee that it'll last, so you have to keep following up. These are choices you make continually each time you breathe in or out. Each time there's a mental moment where something else presents itself to you. You could go wandering off for a while, but you choose, no, I'm going to stay right here. And if the mind complains, what's happening? Nothing's happening. You can tell it. That's the whole point. You're trying to get used to being still, because only when the mind is still can it see itself clearly. And here again, you make choices. How still does it have to be? Sometimes you say, my mind isn't still enough yet to understand anything. so I'll just keep on working at the stillness. Other times, though, problems come up in life that you can't avoid. You've got to deal with them somehow, so you take what powers of concentration you have, what powers of discernment you have, and you put them to use. It's in this way that they get developed. It's like when you're hungry. You look in the refrigerator, and the food is a little bit spoiled, but not so badly spoiled that you can't eat it. You tell yourself, if I were to wait until the food was perfect, I might not eat at all. So you make the best use of what you've got. In some cases, by doing that, you learn a lot more than a person who always has good ingredients. They talk about software designers back in the 90s and how the software designers from India tended to design really elegant software, very simple but powerful software, because the computers they had were limited. So they realized they had to find the elegant solution that could be run on a computer with low power. As a result, they became really good coders, really good software designers, better than the people who had lots of power to work with and tended to squander it. Sometimes when you're dealing with limited resources, you can learn to use your ingenuity to develop skills you wouldn't have developed otherwise. So there are times when you can't wait until your concentration is perfect or your discernment is perfect before you use them. In fact, they never get perfect unless you begin using them beforehand, and you get a sense of what their powers are. But again and again and again, it's always a matter of realizing that you have choices. When I started out meditating, the different methods I was taught told you that you had no choice. Just stay with the breath as it's going to come in on its own. Don't try to change it. You had to limit your attention to the spot at the tip of the nose. Or, if you were doing insight practice, you had to make sure that your mind didn't think about anything. If it did think, you just had to note, and that was your only choice. Your only tool was the noting. There weren't many choices available. I found my mind rebelling. Instead of trying to find freedom through those methods, I tried to get free from those methods. Only when I encountered Ajahn Lee's teachings about how you can work with the breath in many different ways, choosing your point of focus, trying to get your awareness to fill the whole body, giving it more space, that's when I began to realize that the process of freeing the entire heart and mind requires that you use the entire heart and mind. In other words, you use your desires, you use your persistence, you use your powers of analysis. Things that the other methods said that you had to cut off were things you actually used. Your heart was engaged as well, as you looked for a happiness that was lasting, a happiness that wouldn't harm anyone. It's by using the whole heart and mind that you can free the whole heart and mind. An important part of using your mind is realizing that you have choices. You notice this in the world outside. When people want to exert power over you, they'll tell you that you have no choice, or they limit the number of choices they present to you. They don't want you to think outside the box, but when we're meditating, a lot of the thinking does go outside the box. You notice in the Buddha's instructions for meditation, he gives you some ideas of what you can do. But as to how you're going to accomplish those things, he leaves that up to you to discover through your own powers of observation, through your own experimentation. That's how you get engaged in the meditation, not by simply following the rules, but by understanding the basic principles and then learning how you can apply them to your specific needs right here, right now. That's how you develop sensitivity. That's how you develop discernment. That's how the whole mind and body grow in such a way that the whole mind and body can eventually gain release. Choiceful Awareness. Sometimes our problem as meditators is that we've read too much, listened to too many explanations about meditation. We know what happens at the end, and, given our general impatience, we want to rush right there. We've heard about all the wonderful things that happen when you gain discernment and insight arises, and so we want to be right there, right now, without building the foundation, without mastering the skills that are needed for that insight really to have an impact on the mind, to have the really desired effect, which is to train the mind not to create suffering for itself. So remember that what we're developing here is a skill, and the skill has to go through very basic steps. Don't think that you're too advanced for those basics. They're basic not because they're simple, but because they're important, like the basic principle of karma, that our lives are being shaped by the choices we make. We'd rather go straight to choiceless awareness, where everything is already okay and nothing has to be done. Now, it is true that at the moment of awakening, the mind is not making choices. It has finally arrived at a spot where, in not making any choice, it opens to the deathless. But to get to that point, you first have to master choiceful awareness. In other words, being very clear about the choices you're making and trying to do them skillfully. For instance, right now, you could be staying with the breath, or you could be focusing on something else. You could be breathing in one way, or you could be breathing in another. You could be perceiving the breath simply as the air coming in and out of the nose, or you could be perceiving it as a kind of energy. You could perceive that energy as flowing or as still. There are lots of choices, and the fact is, we're making a lot of decisions all the time. The problem is that many of those decisions are being made on default mode so that we're hardly aware of them. As a result, when you think you're practicing choiceless awareness, what's actually happening is that you're closing your eyes to the choices you're making. Years back, there was the story of a monk who had gone to Ajahn Mahabuwa's monastery and declared to some of the junior monks there that he had no doubts about the Buddha's teachings, which, in the vocabulary of the monastery, was a declaration of stream entry. So someone reported this to Ajahn Mahabuwa, and Ajahn Mahabuwa put his hands over his eyes and said, "I have no doubts. I have no doubts about anything I see." Of course, you don't see anything with your hands over your eyes. The point he was making is that the monk was really not paying much attention. There's a lot to doubt. There's a lot to question yourself about in the practice. And this is not a matter of unskillful doubt. There are lots of things you can have skillful questions about, you want to explore. This especially applies to your choices. Too often, we think we're not making choices, and yet, it's simply because the choices have gone underground. One of the purposes of meditation is to bring those choices up into the light of day, so you can see them and learn how to make them more skillful. In fact, by making them more skillful, you get more and more sensitive to the choices that are being made on even subtler levels. So, for the time being, choose to stay with the breath. If you find the mind wandering off, choose to come back to the breath again. And if it feels like a lot of effort is being put into focusing on the breath, well, choose to make that effort. It's in setting up this sort of intention that you give something for all your other intentions to bounce off of. That's how you become sensitive to them. If the mind seems to be totally placid, accepting everything that comes along, give it this choice to stay with the breath and see how accepting it is. If it's not accepting of this choice, you've got a problem. When you recognize that the problem is something you need to solve, you can begin to dig up some of the issues in the mind that you haven't been sensitive to before. You can realize how the mind was making all of these other choices, and it liked wandering around or allowing thoughts to come in without any resistance. It seemed to be making no choices because none of its choices were being challenged. So here you're challenging those choices with the breath. Notice how you're breathing. Explore what kind of breathing feels good right now, because that's an area where you can exercise some skillful choices. Notice how you think about the breath. Notice how you evaluate the breath. Those are ways in which you make choices as well. Decide whether you like this kind of breathing or not. If you find something you like, stick with it to test for yourself whether you made a good choice. If it feels good for a while, that's okay. Choose to stick with it. If after a while it doesn't feel good anymore, you can choose to change. It's through exercising your powers of choice that you become more sensitive to how they function and to the impact that they have. That enables you to get better and better at making good choices. For example, you can focus on the way you perceive the breath. When the breath comes in, where do you think of it coming in? From which directions does it come in? You might want to explore first to see what those directions already are before you decide to make changes. Sometimes, when you breathe in, some parts of the body are getting their breath energy from the front, and others are getting breath energy from the back. Some parts have the breath energy coming down from the top of the head. Others have breath energy coming up from the soles of the feet. These energies may be harmonious or may be in conflict. This is something you can explore. Then you try to figure out how to resolve some of those conflicts. How do you breathe? And how do you hold a perception of the breath in mind that allows things to work together so that when the breath energy comes in, the whole body feels like it's being nourished with no sense of conflict? As you stay with the breath, you begin to notice that the breath energy in some parts of the body is moving, while in other parts of the body it's still. Now, it can be still either because those parts of the body are being depleted or starved of breath energy, or because they're full. They don't need any more energy. Ajahn Fuang's image is of a big jar of water. In Thailand, when they collect rainwater, they use enormous earthenware jars. As long as the jar is empty, you can put more water in, put more in, put more in, but you get to a point where it's full, and no matter how much more water you put in, the water in the jar is just going to stay as it was. You can't make it even more full than that. Any excess water just overflows. The same with the breath. It's usually a good idea to try to breathe in an energetic way as you begin meditating, and to think of the moving breath energy going through all parts of the body, waking up the different elements, waking up the different parts of the body, energizing them until you gain a sense that the breath energy is full and that trying to push more energy into a particular part of the body is actually unpleasant. That's a sign you've got a section of the body that should be left alone and allowed to stay still. The sense of stillness that's full. That's what you allow to spread at the next stage. There's a Dhamma talk where Ajahn Lee mentions that you don't want to spread the moving energy around. He's talking about this second stage, where there's just a sense of fullness, stillness, lightness, pleasure. Sometimes, paradoxically, the fullness feels empty. but there's a sense that it feels really good. You allow it to spread around. Let it spread through the body and allow all the still energy areas to connect up. The breath will then get a lot more refined. You can pursue this to the point where everything grows totally still. Your thoughts are still. The breath is still. The body feels filled with still breath energy. The mind feels no need to go thinking about anything else. Of course, deep down inside, it's still making choices, choosing subtly to stay right here, to maintain what you've got. But a lot of other choices just fall away. You're not interested in getting involved with other things, and when other choices or intentions do come up, you see them very clearly. How they form at the frontier area where they're not clearly mental or physical. There's a kind of stirring, and you can just leave it as a stirring in the breath energy, or the mind could slap a perception or label on it and turn it into a thought and go running with it. But as you're staying right here, you realize that you're right at the point where that kind of decision is being made. For the time being, you can decide. No thoughts, no thoughts. When little eddies of breath energy threaten to turn into nodules, allow them to dissolve away. You don't want to explore their content, because first you want to get really, really skilled at knowing what the mind is like when a very minimal level of fabrication or choice is going on. That's so you get more and more sensitive to choices when they happen. This is how you approach the advanced level of meditation, where the mind is making fewer and fewer choices after first choosing to be very sensitive to how you're making the choices and what the results are. You're practicing choiceful awareness, learning how the mind chooses to be still and chooses various ways of breathing and perceiving the breath and perceiving any distractions that may come up in such a way that you can maintain this stillness. If you're going to be thinking about inconstancy, stress, or not self, anicca, dukkha, anatta, focus that analysis on the distractions so that you can quickly let them dissolve. Allow your concentration and awareness of the breath to be as constant and pleasurable and as much under control as possible. It's in exercising these choices that you get really, really sensitive to what's going on. That way, when the moment arrives where there's a genuine lack of choice, you're poised right at the threshold of something really important. It's because you've developed this sensitivity to choice that you can detect even the slightest glimmerings of choice that may come up in the mind. That's how you let them go. Without having developed this sensitivity, you won't see them. If you don't see them, there's no way you can let them go. So don't be in too great a hurry to get to the end point. What you should be focusing on right now is making sure you've got the basic choices down pat, over and over and over again. This requires patience. Everybody, of course, would like to go straight to the end, but you can't go to the end until you've gotten really sensitive about the basics. The choice to keep coming back to the breath and to choose skillful ways of breathing. Those are the choices that will open things up inside. The path may not progress as quickly as you'd like, but it does progress. It gets you there. Otherwise, if you try to force yourself straight to the end, you end up falling off and going nowhere at all.